Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. And in this video we're going to install the glazing in the windows that we installed about a few months ago in the tower room. It took a while before I got the glazing, but finally I have the glazing and I'm quite happy that we now can mount it. Now the glass we're going to use is double-sided glass and it has a high insulation factor. The outer panel is 5mm thick glass. We have a 9mm spacer, and then we have an inner glass of 4mm. There's a special coat on it and you can probably see that it's a bit greenish, but of course you're looking through about 8 pieces of glass now, so that is not really representative of the actual color. You'll see it once I have a single window or glass out. You'll see that it's far more clear than that. We're going to glue the glass inside the window frames, and for that we're going to be using this special tape that comes with it. And this is a very good and easy way of glazing. I don't need to use any silicone as such to hold it into place. I'm just going to use this sticky tape, and this really works well, but of course we'll have to remove all the grease on the edges, but you'll see all that very shortly. But first of all, now I need to do something else. You might remember from a previous video that we have painted the wings already on the outside for the window frame, and in fact the whole window frame that's in the tower room was painted as well. But on the inside we haven't painted it yet, and we didn't want to paint it because we wanted to keep it clear oak. However, I still want to put a coat of varnish on that, matte varnish, specifically for this kind of wood. Now the small wood, as we call it, this is the part that's going to go in the front of it, has already been varnished, so that's easy to be installed afterwards. And it's actually that small wood that you see here that's also going to hold the glass a bit in place. Now this will be removable, so we can actually clean the windows from the inside. Now the outer part is not removable, that has to stay. So we're going to spray this in the spray booth with varnish. And then we're going to tape, this is the special tape, we're going to tape all along the edges, all around it. And the tape is going to be there to hold the glass really in place. So you don't need to use a lot of silicone or anything like that to hold the glass. So that is a very good and easy way of doing it. And the glass actually will be fitted in between the outer part and the inner part. So the glass is going to be caught in between those two elements, right? So that's what we will do with the glass. And that's why you need to order the glass to the right dimensions, the right thickness. Or when you make your frames, you got to make sure that you build the frames in the proper way, that you have the right thickness for that window or the glass to be fitted in. So I'm just going to trial fit one of the pieces of glass into the frame, and this is always a very exciting moment because you never know if it's going to fit. It should, and I think this is going to fit just fine. Of course I still have some cork on it on the sides, but that's going to fit in really good, so I'm happy with that. And once the glass is done in, we finally will cover it up with this panel. So that's good. It's always a bit tricky to order the glass. You got to make sure that you have a little bit of play on the sides, because wood is living, so wood will shrink and expand. So you need to give it that little bit of space on the edges. Now I have about, let me say, 1mm to 1.5 millimeters on both sides, and that's more or less okay. So let me remove the glass now, and we're going to start painting these frames, and then we're going to put the glazing all back together with the tape. All right. Don't want to drop anything because the glass breaks very quickly. And we'll take the wood to the paint booth. So I'm going to paint the window frames in the paint booth, just because I have the paint booth, because I'm restoring cars. But you might as well do this with a paintbrush. You don't need to have a paint booth for this. Now the first thing I'm going to do now is to blow it clean so there's no more dust on it. I already have it sanded some time ago, but they have been sitting there like almost 2 months, I guess. So there's a bit of dust on it. going to paint the wood with a spray gun just because I'm having to have one, and I have this boot for restoring cars. And we're going to paint it with parquet varnish. So that's typically the varnish that you're going to use on the floor, and this is satin. This is water-based, and it's really, really good. Now, I'm not going to make a commercial for this brand, but you could use any other kind of brand for that purpose. But the satin always looks quite nice on oak, and what you don't want to have is a varnish that's going to turn yellow, because after a while the oak is going to look really shitty with this yellow coat on it. So let's prepare the air gun and start painting. But first of all, we're going to rub it all clean and degrease it, and have a look, see how much still comes off. And that, of course, is not going to help much if you're going to paint. And for that you can use any kind of solvent, actually. White spirit is good, or another kind of thinner is just good as well. It doesn't really matter as long as it's degreasing. And for that you can use any kind of thinner as long as it degreases the wood and doesn't discolor it, because with oak you have to watch out a little bit. So that looks like it's finished. So I'm going to let it dry now, and then tomorrow morning we use it and we put the tape up and we put the glazing in. Meanwhile, the varnish has settled and it's about ready now to receive the glass. Now, we are kind of lucky that we have wings on the window frame that we can take off and then install it all together when the glass is in. But some parts of the window frames, the parts that are all the way on the top, we cannot take it out of the frame, so we'll have to put the glass there in position, which is a little bit more difficult to work because it's pretty high up, but it doesn't really matter. So we're going to start with the wings. And before we can start fitting the glass, we want to trial fit it, making sure that we have the proper spaces all around it. Then we'll put in the tape, but we also need to do some work, or preparation work, on the glass itself. So now we are going to prepare the glass to be put into the window frame. And we will first of all remove all these little protectors that you will find on the glass. I already removed all the rest. And then we need to degrease it. So we want to make sure that it's going to really stick well to the tape we're going to use. But we don't want to degrease it right now. I'm going to use what we call acetone for this. And then finally, we'll have to make sure that the edges, although they are factory built, are really smooth and clean. Because you will see that in some places the glue actually came out. And for that, we're going to use a scraper like this. And that's very handy to make that edge really smooth. Because remember, the gap between the wood and the actual window is very narrow. And just to give you an example, here you have actually a thicker piece of glue that came out while it was constructed in the factory. And of course, these big bubbles we can't have. We have to have this absolutely smooth. So that's why we're using a tool like this, just to go over it, you know, and just go along the edge of the glass and scrape it off. And you also might want to do it on the top, because sometimes there is residue on the top as well. And that way we're getting a very smooth and even area. The point is not to remove all the stickers, because some stickers identify the outside. And this sticker actually tells me that this side of the glass is the outside. And that's important because this window is built out of two pieces of glass. with different purposes. So there's a plenty clear side and there's a plenty terminal side, which is the inside. So we need to make sure that this is mounted the right way to have the efficiency of the installation of that. And there's a couple of other things you're going to need to install the glazing into the frames. And this is not a toy box for kids. These are actually all different spacers of different thickness. So I have 1 millimeter, I've got 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters, different spacers that you can actually fit all around the glass, so that you have an equal space on the left and the right, top and bottom. And that's important because wood is expanding and shrinking. So that's why I want to use spacers, and you'll see me putting these spacers into the frame before we put actually the glass in. And it's just for a trial, and then once that is in, we'll put the tape up. I still keep the spacers in place. I will actually tape them in place. Then I put the glass in, and then I know that the glass is going in properly, because if you don't, remember, once the glass is in, you can't move it anymore. Once it's onto the sticky tape, then it's over. Right, so this is the play box. Let me put that aside. And the other tool you're going to need is what we call a suction tool. You will have to lift the glass, and you can't lift it on the sides because it has to go in the grooves of the wood. So that's why we have a suction tool. And this is the suction tool, and always keep this padding clean, and then you put it on there, and then you just, push on those things and it will suck things up, and now you can lift the glass. And this is how that works. So make sure you have a good quality one, that it doesn't leak, because you don't want to drop the glass. So this is something you absolutely must have. Some of them are single suction, some are double suction. I like the double suction, it's a bit more handy. All right. So let's do a trial fit now of the glass. I have the window frame flat and horizontal, so now I'm going to get the glass and we'll try to move it in. And that is in. And now it's a matter of spacing it right. And now you will see why we're going to need those little spacers. Now this is the bottom side, so I'm going to put a spacer up of about 2 mil. Let's see on the top, that's about 2 mil. And on the sides, I think I probably can fit a spacer, which is going to be about 1 millimeter. Okay, which are these big blue ones? That's one. I will fit one here. And let's see if that is not too thin. Let's try the thicker ones. So that would be one. And I can now move the glass over a bit and see if I can stick one on the other side. That's too much. So I need something in the middle. We have now everything nicely spaced. I'm now going to take out these spacers, and then I'll take out the glass, and then we'll make sure that these spacers go back in with some tape so we don't lose them. And now it's time to put the tape up, and I'm going to place the tape right at the edge. So we have applied the tape on the window frame, and now I'm going to remove the protective layer on it, and then we put the glass in. Now with the glass in place, we're going to fill up this edge here, this gap, with an elastic glue. And then I'm going to pull it level. And then I'm going to scrape it clean. And the glass is now in place, and the gap in between the glass and the wooden frame is now filled up with an elastic seam or elastic glue. And now we just need to install the small wood. And I'm going to install the small wood first onto the window frame. Now the intent of the small wood at the inside is that you can actually remove that. So I can either put hinges on it or I can lock it in place with some special nails. And that's what I'm going to do. And the mechanism to hold the small wood in place will be with double-headed nails. And the reason they call them double-headed nails is because they have two heads. So it will go into the wood to a certain point, to the first head, and the second head will stick out, so I can always grab it to pull it out. Now I'm not going to nail it in. I will drill a hole and then put that nail in so we can hold things in place. They're a bit too long, so I will have to shorten those. So that's the first thing we now need to do, and we have to be careful not to drill into the glass because that would be a disaster. All right. Cut the nail. There we go. And that's done. And this is how we're going to do it at 4 different places. So the mechanism to hold it in place is by drilling a hole so we can fit these nails into it, and then it is locked. And then we're going to paint these little nails with a bit of black paint. Doesn't have to be a lot. And this is matte paint. And that's all there is to it. So folks, you've seen on how we installed the glass into the window frames. We've done the wings, and I still have to do the top part of the windows themselves. These are fixed parts, so I have to do it with the bigger frame in place. So that's a little bit more crawling around because I have to install my scaffold for that. But the method is exactly the same. In the next video, you will see on how I'm installing actually the wings themselves with the glass and the finished result. Because right now, the glue that I put on the edges has to cure, and once that is done, I can only fit the wings. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.